By many standards, my modest bicycle collection is neither large, especially unique, nor highly collectible. But just as some folks collect Hummel figurines, Nike shoes, or old clocks, I collect, restore, and have a deep appreciation for bicycles built in the 1960s, 70s, and 80s. That was an era before carbon fiber frames, electronic shifters, synthetic lubricants, and anodized everything else. It was a time of steel, aluminum, leather, ball bearings, sew-ups, and grease. Frames were handmade one at a time in dark, often unsafe workshops by humble craftsmen who were born in the first half of the last century. This small collection represents bicycle craftsmanship from 1966 through 1989. The bikes come from England, the USA, Italy, and France. It's certainly not an exhaustive collection from that era. The bikes are what I could obtain for a relatively modest outlay of cash. I started the collection with two of the remaining frames that I had personally built, sold, and reacquired after more than 10 years of building and over 33 years since I last held a torch. The first bike shown here was built in 1977 using Columbus butted tubing and Henry James cast lugs, fork crown, and bottom bracket. It was originally fitted with bullhorn style handlebars along with primarily Japanese componentry. One component not made in Japan were the Italian Modolo brakes. The geometry was quite steep for the late 70s and was intended to be a quick steering 26-inch time trialer made for a tall rider. The other Granlund frame in my collection is also built using Columbus chromoly tubing. The red and white steel frame still has the original DuPont Imron paint job, but has largely been built up with Campagnolo components. The exceptions to Campagnolo are the Cinelli bar and stem. It was built in 1989. A steel frame that represents the best of British frame building is this 1968 Charles Roberts. I obtained it from the original owner in Ludington, Michigan. It is all original and was ridden regularly until it was sold to me. The frame is Reynolds 531, and all of the components are either Campagnolo or Cinelli, with the saddle being a British Brooks leather model. The bike was obviously well cared for and has no paint chips or any type of damage. If its use had to be classified, it would likely fall into the club racer category. The only outlier in my collection, at least in terms of frame material, is this Italian Guerciotti made by the Elan Bicycle Company. The anodized frame is all aluminum and was built in 1989. The lugs and tubing were threaded and then bonded rather than welded together. Elan made this identical frame set design for a number of Italian companies. As it sits, it is entirely fitted with Campagnolo and Cinelli components. I obtained the bare frame set from the owner in Montague, Michigan. He rode it regularly for years and then stripped it and sold all of the valuable Italian componentry prior to my buying the frame. The oversized polished aluminum lugs and fork crown make this bike an eye-catcher. Norman Fay was a British frame builder during the late 60s and early 1970s who built and sold just under 100 frame sets. From that standpoint, this bicycle might be among the rarest find in my collection. It was made in 1972 from Reynolds 531 chrome molybdenum alloy steel. I purchased it from the original owner in Bel Air, Michigan. The now 74-year-old owner purchased it while working as a teenager in a bicycle shop in Kalamazoo, Michigan. The teen purchased components as he could afford them, and as a result they are a mix of largely Japanese and French brands, including the Ideal saddle and Maillard hubs. The slack frame angles, front and rear dropout eyelets, and relatively low gearing would have this bike perhaps fall into the tourist category. The latest addition to my collection is a bright orange Bob Jackson. I found the bare frame hiding under a vendor's table at the Monroe, Michigan Bike Exchange. The rear triangle had been damaged by what appeared to be a rear-end collision or perhaps a careless automobile rack incident. I thought that I could repair the damage and offered the vendor $125 for the frame and fork. It was perhaps a bit much for a damaged frame, but I sure do love an orange bicycle. And I coveted a Bob Jackson. I straightened and cold set the seat stays, trued the frame, spent a month, hundreds of dollars, and many hours polishing used components in order to fit it out with Campagnolo group set. The wheels were built using DT Swiss spokes, Campagnolo record hubs, and Sun rims. I was fortunate to find a replica Bob Jackson decal to replace the damaged one on the top tube. The oldest restoration in the collection is the 1966 French Louis-Saint Bobet. Bobet was a 3-time Tour of France winner and sold his name to both Mercier and Stella so that they could make bikes under his name in order to capitalize on his popularity at the time. I found this bike for sale in Houghton Lake, Michigan. It was being sold by the original owner who brought it with him to America from France so that he would have transportation while he attended university. The thing that stood out to me was the quality, detailed paint job on an otherwise ho-hum 1960s bicycle. But down to the tires, it's all original and it cleaned up nicely. The aluminum water bottle or bidon is not original, but it is period correct, as is a shiny aluminum tire pump. The derailleurs are steel, low-end Huret models. The pedals are Lyotard. The toe clips are Christophe. The high flange hubs are Normandy. The brakes are CLB, and the crankset is Nerbar. The Lux Tub straight gauge steel tubing, along with the steel components, are hallmarks of a heavy, low to mid-grade 60s bicycle. I'm now in my 70s and I get to say what might pass as wisdom. They don't build them like this anymore.